judges are public servants, and they understand that bureaucrats and the president are public servants. And there should be some kind of faith in each other that they have, that, you're not dealing with lying scumbags.
Yeah.
But the problem is now
they are dealing with lying scumbags. Hello, everyone, and welcome to George Conway Explains It All. To Sarah, I'm Sarah Longwell, publisher of the Bulwark, and because I'm not a lawyer, that's
Sarah's the best.
Friend George Conway to explain the illegal news to me.
Illegal, yes.
And to all of us. But before we do, you've been inserting yourself into the DC bar race a little bit more.
Yes, and I basically hand cut my own ad. Usually, when we did Psychopack last year, I had your people do it, and they were very nice. But I did this rough cut ad where I cut out video and I put it together, and then I did it. I got into on a subway platform. I did the voiceovers, and it worked. And basically, the story is, we talked about this last week. I think, right?
Let me just give you an okay, boomer.
Yeah,
that's a nice one for half.
Are we going to play the clip, or what?
Yeah, let's just show it to people.
All right. Hi, it's me again with another Instagram message for the DC bar. And this one's going to be short and punchy. You see, Brad Bondi's mad at me. He's big mad. And I'll let him explain why.
The attacks that her allies have made on my family and me, or the ugly insinuation that I'm somehow leading some conspiracy to overthrow democracy.
Now, I didn't say any of that. I didn't accuse anybody of being part of a conspiracy. In fact, I said Brad is a nice guy and a smart lawyer. He's not like his sister.
She came back and corrected herself one more time.
President Trump, your DOJ agencies have seized more than 22 million fentanyl pills, which saved, are you ready for this, media? 258 million lives.
258! 258 million lives? What is happening here?
Not only did I say that Brad's a nice guy, I actually watched the candidates debate. And I thought he made some very nice points, and I was particularly impressed with what he had to say about pro bono.
Proud of the consistent time that I've spent on pro bono through the bar. I volunteered and spent over 100,000 hours on both pro bono and volunteer efforts, helping particularly families in need. Because I've seen how those hours, over 100,000 pro bono and volunteer hours myself in my career.
That's incredibly impressive. Amazing. 100,000, wait.
Over 100,000 hours on both 100,000 myself in my career.
Hold on. Siri, what's 100,000 hours divided by 25 years?
100,000 hours divided by 25 years equals 4,000 hours per year.
What's 4,000 hours divided by 365 days?
4,000 hours divided by 365 days equals approximately 10.96 hours per day.
So do the math and vote for Diane Seltzer for DC Bar President. Here's what she is concerned about.
My platform is and has been, and I'm very vocal about it, is to make sure that we maintain and uphold the rule of law and that people feel that they can practice law safely without worrying about executive orders or without retaliation or without being targeted in any possible way by the government.
Actually, you don't need to do math to figure out who to vote for. All you need to know is that Brad Bondi is running to be president of a bar association at a time when the practice of law and the rule of law are under attack from the government. And what does Brad have to say about this, apart from the false victimhood and the whining?
Driven by our allies, political attacks will drag the bar into a quagmire of partisanship.
He says raising the issues that Diane wants to raise politicizes the bar. And indeed, he even says it's beneath the bar. Well, that's all you need to know about Brad Bondi. No conspiracies necessary. Please vote for Diane Seltzer by June 4th. In fact, try to get it done this week or next before Memorial Day so you don't forget. Thank you.
There you go. That was good. Way to go. I'm so proud of you and your IMAX skills.
Thank you. I did it. I basically did it all on my phone.
Yeah, you did that on your phone from a metro station.
Yes.
Incredible.
Well, I mean, I did the clipping of the candidates debate and the Daily Show in my apartment. I had it all ready to go, and I decided I'm just going to do this today. So I just went to the nearest spot I could find that kind of is DC-like, and I did it.
George Conway, folks, available for hire for memes, video memes, whatever you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's kind of funny because I wouldn't have done the second ad except for the way the guy reacted to the first ad. The first ad, I didn't say anything bad about him. All I said was, he's Pam Bondi's brother. I practiced law with him like 10 years ago. I met him. I thought he was a nice guy. We agreed on things politically. I thought he was a reasonably smart lawyer. But, in this environment, the bar has to take a stand on the things that's happening to it, as just even apart from as citizens, as members of the bar's being attacked through these executive orders and all sorts of other things. And it's like, I don't know how you can expect somebody who's the brother of the attorney general, who's neck deep in it, or eyeball deep even, to do that. And I just said, this isn't the time for this guy to be the president of a major bar association. I didn't say he was conspiring with this sister. I didn't say he was destroying democracy. He could have come right out and said, look, I don't agree with what my sister's doing. My point was, he's not the person who's going to be able to call it out.
Yeah.
And bingo, he proves the point. He starts saying, these are despicable attacks by Seltzer's allies, this Conway. He goes on and on, outraged about the video, where I didn't criticize him. He was very critical of the ad, saying that his children saw it and it was despicable, and that it was like basically pernicious that I had called him out and that I accused him of conspiring, as you heard in the ad, against democracy. And I didn't say any of that. I just said that, it doesn't make sense when bars being under attack by the government and your sister's the attorney general. It's hard to expect you to go out and be critical of the government and critical of your sister. I mean, it was like when I had my differences with the first Trump administration, I never attacked my wife, even though I was kind of appalled at some of the stuff she was doing and saying. I attacked everybody else. But anyway, so that was my only point about Brad. And Brad could have come back and said, listen, I don't agree with what my sister's doing. I don't agree that lawyers should be punished for the. He could have said that, which is my point. He didn't say that.
Right.
The point is that he couldn't make the point. And so, that was the thrust of this ad. And plus, then he starts yapping about 100,000 hours of pro bono. And the guy's like 50-something, and he's been practicing law like 26 years. And it's like, I worked at one of the hardest working law firms in Manhattan for 30 years. And billable and non-billable pro bono and regular work, I never got over 3,500 hours. I would have died if I'd gotten 4,000 hours. And this basically,
their math's not math.
Their math's
in either
not.
Case.
No, it's just very weird, the culture of these people. And I don't think he's I don't think he means ill. I just think it's just this weird culture where you can't take criticism, and you
you make up big numbers to push back.
You just kind of like blowhardish. I don't know that maybe he just didn't think about what the number was. I'm not saying he's lying or anything like that, but it was just bizarre.
No, you're saying it's
bizarre,
impossible, physically.
No, it's physically possible if you were in a monastery and you were a hardworking monk doing volunteer work as a monk, which is actually your job, and you gave alms to the poor 11 hours a day and didn't take a vacation for 25 years. There probably are people like that in work, but I don't think they practice securities law in the District of Columbia. But anyway.
Right. All right. Well, let's transition from that into Surfshark.
Whoa.
Let me tell you about Surfshark, George. All right, real talk. Have you ever searched something random like how to fix a leaky tap, and suddenly you're getting ads for plumbers in 5 different cities? Me too. It's a bit scary how much the internet...
You get the sponsored ad, and they might not be the one you're looking for.
Yeah.
And you have to go through about 7 of this one.
It's a bit scary how much the internet seems to know about me these days. Thankfully, today's sponsor can help us out with that. With Surfshark, your online activity is encrypted from prying eyes. Think of it as a secure digital vault for your data. Whether you're researching sensitive topics or just browsing the news, your activity stays private. When you install Surfshark, you feel so much calmer when browsing online. That weird ad targeting eases off, and you don't have to weigh up the potential consequences of every search you make anymore. Big
Wow.
win. Big
Yeah.
win. Plus, when I travel, which I do all the time, as I know you do too, Surfshark can change my virtual location. So I can watch shows and sports like I'm sitting on my couch back home. Yeah?
Oh, wow. I'm going to Europe next week. And I want to watch hockey and
Yeah.
basketball.
So this is where you use one of these VPNs, or like this is where I use it, is you are traveling somewhere else and you want to be able to see the sports
I want to be able to watch TNT
Yeah.
on YouTube TV.
Yeah, although the Caps lost last night, so they're not in the playoffs anymore, which is a bummer.
Okay, but their best player is a Russian oligarch.
Ovi?
Well, he's a friend of Putin's. Maybe not an oligarch.
He is?
You didn't
Why
know
are you ruining hockey for me, man?
I'm not ruining hockey for you. This is just facts.
Okay.
I mean, he's a great player. I mean, as a hockey fan, I have to say he's just amazing. But you want a good, upstanding guy. He's retired now. Dominik Hasek.
I don't know who that is.
He was a goaltender in the 90s for the Buffalo Sabres, and he just trashes Trump all the time and trashes Putin.
Great.
He's a Czech politician now. Or Slovakian? I don't know.
Okay. So, and if you're serious about digital security, check out Surfshark Alert. It notifies you if your personal data has been leaked online because knowing is protecting. Secure your privacy with Surfshark. Go to surfshark.com/askgeorge or use Ask George for 4 extra months of Surfshark. That's surfshark.com/askgeorge.
Well, I got to say, I love Surfshark. I love that's a great name.
Surfshark is a
It's
good
a great
name.
name. Bum, 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 bum. I think of Jaws, bum, bum, bum.
Guys, you're going to find a link in the show notes, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. No risk, just secure browsing. Thanks, Surfshark. On Thursday, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in the birthright citizenship case. This is the big legal news this week. And John Sauer is now the Solicitor General. But this was interesting to me. Folks might remember him as Trump's lawyer in the presidential immunity litigation.
I saw him argue in the D.C. Circuit.
Yeah, so now he's Solicitor General, and he argued this case for the government. I'll just say off the top, don't you find it, isn't there something like immediately a little icky about he argued the immunity case for Trump, and then Trump made him Solicitor General?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, there's, John Kennedy made his brother Robert Attorney General, and people didn't like that at the time.
I wouldn't like it either.
There's always going to be I'm going to cut some slack, and then I'm going to pull the slack back.
Okay.
Okay. You want people you trust and have known if you're president, and there's going to be a few people there where, not everybody else would have chosen them, but you trust them and so on. Here, what makes this kind of bad and worse is, first of all, the president's a criminal, but let's set that aside, is that he appointed 3 of his lawyers to high positions in the Justice Department. Todd Blanche, what's the other guy's name? You got the deputy attorney, Emile Bove.
I was thinking about like Aline Haba.
No. Oh, well, yeah. Well, that's 4 then, right?
Yeah.
You have Bove, you have Todd Blanche, okay, as the deputy and associate attorney generals, and you have this guy as the solicitor general, and then you got Alina Haba, who was unable in the E. Jean Carroll case against Trump. In fact, when she was defending Trump in that case, she was incapable of introducing a document into evidence, which kids in high school do for trial, when they do their mock trials. And the judge was like looking at her, apparently. I've heard about this, like what? Where did this woman come from?
Yeah.
And she's now the United States attorney in the District of New Jersey. So, this is all very gross. And it's completely ridiculous. If he just picked Sauer to be SG, Sauer's, I have to give it to him. He's a decent appellate lawyer. He writes decent briefs. And I thought he did a decent job yesterday.
He was very compelling at lying dead in the faces of the Supreme Court justices.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing that he is saying that was most objectionable was that there is a legal justification for the government's merits position, which is that not everybody who's born in the United States is a citizen of the United States, notwithstanding the fact that the 14th Amendment says exactly that, and the Supreme Court has said exactly that since 1898, and has basically said exactly that at least 2 or 3 more times. Let's set that aside. The arguments he was making weren't crazy because this is not, we call this the birthright citizenship case that was litigated yesterday. It isn't really the birthright citizenship.
Well, let's just set this up just so
Yeah.
people are clear about it, right? Because the issue wasn't technically about the constitutionality of the executive order about birthright citizenship, right? That would be the substantive matter. It's not that.
The merits is what we
Instead,
call
it's
it.
about the use of nationwide injunctions.
Right.
And we've talked a lot about that on
Yeah.
the show. And just explain the nationwide injunctions issue.
Okay, so here's what. In a normal lawsuit, I sue you, you sue me, something, and I want to get you to stop doing something, and I win, you can't do the same thing to me again.
Yeah.
The thing about with the government is when the government does one thing to one person, it's usually doing it to a whole bunch of other people. So what happens when you sue the government saying, my benefits were denied? Let's take it out of the birthright citizenship context because it's inflammatory. And the government's doing some practice that's not consistent with law and calculating people's benefits wrong. All right. The question is, can the court enjoin the government from doing that across the board? It's not nationwide. It's called universal injunctions.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last several years, there's been more and more of that kind of litigation against administrations of both parties. I think it really goes back to probably the 90s in the Clinton administration. And, when the Democrats are in the executive, and we saw this in the Obama administration, we saw it in the Biden administration, what happens is that conservative groups or conservative attorneys general, they pick a judge somewhere that's more favorable to them, and they get injunctions.
Texas.
The Eastern District of Texas, there's this one guy there who's like a complete tune, and he got so many important cases, it was ridiculous.
Is this what people mean when they say judge shopping?
Yeah, forum shopping. And forum shopping is something that, all lawyers do.
Yeah.
It has a negative connotation because it can get abusive and you can take it too far. But let's say you're suing me for something. You could sue me in federal court. You could sue me in state court. If I'm doing business in multiple states, you can choose which state or even which district in a state. And one of the things that you do in any lawsuit of any sort, basically, any private civil action, is you try to figure out which of the where can you sue and support jurisdiction and venue, and which is the best court, which has the judges that you like the most, or who have experienced with this in the past, or who move cases quickly, or who are more Republican than Democrat or something. You just, because on the margins it can make a difference. And that's just part of the process. And that's a natural part of the process. But sometimes it gets abusive when parties are doing it, for example, and taking tendentious positions about where jurisdiction lies or where venue lies. In the case of the nationwide injunction or the universal injunction issue, there is actually an unfairness to the government. Again, both Democrat and Republican administrations suffer from this. If I'm, Joe ACLU, and I'm the lawyer for the ACLU, and I want to sue the government somewhere, I might bring 3 or 4 cases in different places. And if I win, if the relief I seek and can get from these judges is a universal injunction that says that not only can should the court stop the government from harming my client Sarah Longwell, it should stop it for everybody. All I got to do is win once. And so it's kind of unfair to the government.
So it was interesting, actually, in here.
And that was sort of Sauer's point. And that's a reason why at least 3 of the justices are dead set against nationwide injunctions. And they do have a theoretical basis on that. And the theoretical basis is that there's a case or controversy requirement to the U.S. Constitution. And you're supposed to resolve cases between the parties before you. You don't resolve other people's cases. Now, that doesn't exclude the possibility of a class action, which is a special kind of vehicle where there's a certain kind of class action called a Rule 23b2 class action, where basically all of the people who are fit a certain description are actually non-party parties to the litigation, and they're bound by the judgment. That's a little different. This is just like one person suing or one state, And well, is the government going to be enjoined from doing it to everybody? Now, there are cases where it makes sense, right? Let's say you're being discriminated, your child is being discriminated against on the basis of race or something illegal, and they're segregating the schools. Okay, let's take the school segregation issue. They can't fix your problem without having to do the whole system.
Right.
So that's a natural case in which relief for one person has to be relief for all. The states are arguing, the states are plaintiffs here, and one of their arguments is, okay, fine, it doesn't just affect people who are born in our state, like whether or not we work on getting birth certificates and issue birth certificates and social security numbers to the hospitals in our state when kids are born. People come in from other states, and normally when we give them benefits that are only accessible to citizens, we just say, do you have a birth certificate? And now it becomes administratively complex and difficult if you have to say, well, where were your parents? Were they citizens at the time? And so on and so forth. And the states have a problem here. So that's the argument for why this is more like the school desegregation case. Anyway, bottom line is you've got it from the argument. It's not clear where there is going to go. There's an infinite number of possibilities of splitting the baby here, and it's very complex and difficult, and it's not clear what standards you use to do it. I think the three justices, based upon their prior dissents, are pretty much saying you just can never do this, except maybe in a class action. And then I think the liberal justices are pretty clear that you got to be able to do this, at least and certainly in this case. And I think Justice Amy Coney Barrett is agreeing with the liberals here, and she's taking a lot of heat from conservative circles today about that. And then I think that's 4 votes to 3, and I think it's going to come down to the chief and to Justice Kavanaugh. And Kavanaugh actually made, I heard some people saying, "Oh, it's terrible what the court did. They're really going to crack down on nationwide injunctions." Not clear. I mean, Kavanaugh made some noises that indicated to me that he kind of understands the plaintiff's perspective. And then Roberts, though, made some points I thought were good, which toward the other way is just saying, well, at the end of the day, there are going to be a bunch of cases brought, and one of them is going to come to us, and we'll fix it. And we did the TikTok case in a month. So the problem of not getting universal relief like 2 days after you go into court, it will ultimately fix itself, because if it's that important an issue and there are that many cases brought and that many people affected, it's going to work its way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court's going to issue a definitive decision at some point in the not too distant future, and that will fix the problem. Of course, he leaves apart the possibility that the Supreme Court just might be ignored by the Trump administration, which we may get to. So, does that make sense?
Yeah. All right. I just want to play a quick clip of Justice Kagan explaining the frustration with injunctions, and then you can unpack it for me. So let's listen.
I guess what I worry about here, Ms. Corcoran, is that this case is very different from a lot of our nationwide injunction cases in which many of us have expressed frustration at the way district courts are doing their business. And, the typical way in which that frustration emerges is that legal questions are hard and they're complicated, and different courts would decide them differently. And instead, because of the forum selection process, a party goes to one place. In the first Trump administration, it was all done in San Francisco. And then in the next administration, it was all done in Texas. Right. And there is a big problem that is created by that mechanism.
So it seems like what she's saying here is that whatever party is in power hates injunctions because their opponents can go to an ideologically sympathetic court and get an order from a district court judge that halts the implementation of a law nationally. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Over the last several administrations, that has been a typical thing where, okay, if it's a conservative Republican administration, the liberals go and they pick a nice district that's favorable to them and they get a nationwide injunction against something the conservatives are trying to do. And then it flips, like Obama comes in and all these cases get brought in the Eastern District of Texas before there's one judge. And it kind of looks bad, right? And the point is that the government faces a whole bunch of lawsuits. And anytime it does something that affects the entire country, and if you are the plaintiff or a plaintiff type organization, if you're the ACLU, for example, you're challenging something that you say violates people's constitutional rights, you bring a bunch of these cases, and if you get universal injunctions, or if universal injunctions are available, you only have to win one. And that's the problem. That's what the government's not necessarily that it hates injunctions. It hates the fact that it has to go, if there are 10 cases, they got to win all 10. Because if they lose one, they've lost them all.
Well, that's interesting because in the clip we just played, Justice Kagan, she goes on to say that this case is unique because, like, she's basically saying, this is how it sounds to me. She's basically saying, I understand why it's annoying that you get these nationwide injunctions, and there's times where we're all bothered by it. But in this case, the administration keeps losing everywhere, is what she was saying. This isn't an instance where one ideologically sympathetic court is blocking a law, right? It is like that would definitely be upheld by the Supreme Court. This is the opposite, right? Kagan saying that this law definitely will be overturned because it's so patently wrong. And in fact, one point, Kagan says to the Solicitor General, let's just assume you're dead wrong.
Which he is.
Yeah, right. On the substance.
Yeah. No, and that's the counterpoint. This was really kind of the worst case for the government to take up on this issue, and I'm not sure why they did it, precisely for that reason. This is a case where they should lose in every single district. And I mean, there's the Supreme Court, first, the text of the 14th Amendment is clear. And the Supreme Court decided this issue in a case called United States against Wong Kim Ark in 1898.
Long time ago.
Yes, where basically the argument was that because these two Chinese people were not American citizens and they still had loyalty to a government in China, I think that was the factual basis. Their kid who was born in California or wherever was not an American citizen, and the government lost that case because the Constitution says, and the specific issue was whether or not, the Constitution says in the 14th Amendment, Section 1, says that every person born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a citizen of the United States. And so the question was, what does subject of the jurisdiction thereof mean? And basically the Supreme Court said, okay, if you are a child of a foreign diplomat, you're not. If you are a member of an Indian tribe, you're not. But there are only limited number of circumstances, very limited number of circumstances, where somebody can be physically present in the United States and not be subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And if you are born in a hospital in the United States and you are not, don't have diplomatic immunity because your parents are the Russian ambassador and his wife or something like that, you are an American citizen. Yeah. And it's just that simple. And it's consistent with the historical practice in Anglo-American jurisdictions of what's called jus soli, which is the law of the soil. And so, and then the Supreme Court has decided cases since that have relied on Wong Kim Ark. So this is a ridiculous executive order, and the defense is ridiculous. And this is exactly, Justice Kagan is exactly right. This is not the case where you want to be carving out. This is like, it's so stupid. Why should we make dozens of people litigate this, or hundreds of people, or thousands of people litigate this in district courts everywhere when we know what the answer is going to be? And I think she would end up with a rule saying maybe there's some other case where a nationwide, process, a nationwide or a universal injunction is inappropriate, but it ain't this case.
Yeah.
And again, as I think that basically, I think at least 4 justices are going to come out with that view. I think 3 justices are going to say Alito, Thomas, and Gorsuch feel very strongly about these universal injunctions, and they're going to vote the other way, and then it's going to come down to the Chief and to Justice Kavanaugh. And Justice Kavanaugh made some noises that I thought were not unfavorable to the plaintiffs here. But the question is, what's the standard? And that's a hard thing because you're dealing with all sorts of cases with all sorts of wrinkles, including, for example, the situation where, like a school desegregation case, where you can't just provide relief to one person, you have to basically rearrange the system. And here the states are arguing that we can't just give Social Security numbers and take, we can't just apply this to people in our own state and we're still going to have a problem because there are people coming in from other states. And normally what they do is they show us a birth certificate and we say, fine, you're an American citizen. But now we got to do an investigation of every single one. They got to fill out applications. And who were their parents? Where did their parents get to the United States? What was their immigration status? Which, is going to make it, administration of a lot of programs really untenable the Constitution doesn't require that. I mean, it says all persons born and naturalized in the United States, a birth certificate should be enough.
This was actually an instructive part, I thought, of the argument where they were basically saying, what do you do if this happens? They were talking about all the administrative nightmares that would happen in this case. And he was kind of like, yeah, we don't have a plan yet on that because, this hasn't gone through the court. And so there was sort of a so wait, you're just going to do this and then you're going to come up with a plan?
No, it's interesting. And I think that was Justice Kavanaugh asked a whole bunch of questions like, okay, the executive order, which was issued on January 20th, gave the various departments of the government 30 days to figure out how to implement the order. And that 30-day period was stayed or stopped by the district court's injunction in this case. And Kavanaugh says, you really think if the clock starts running again, they're going to be able to get their act together in 30 days? And, it's another good point. And that actually lends itself to the point that the plaintiffs had, which is, equity and giving temporary injunctions before the end of a litigation, TROs and preliminary injunctions of the sort that we've been seeing left and right dozens of times is like, there's no harm to the government in making the government do what has been doing for decades. Okay? If they're right, in a few months or a couple of years, they'll get to do what they want to do. But let's not, blow up the system by letting the government start doing that now.
Yeah.
So that's a really good equitable point in favor of the plaintiffs. And that's the whole point about this is there's this whole concept of equity in the law. There used to be a division between law courts, which just applied, the parliamentary statute by its terms, and gives you money, if you win a judgment. And then there's this whole concept of equity, which involves when people sue others to stop a nuisance, like they're polluting their land and it's seeping onto your land, or they're playing their stereo too loud.
Yeah.
And that's called equity. It involves the court weighing not only what the legal rights of the parties are, but who is harmed by me telling them to stop if I'm the judge. And that's a very discretionary and it's a very tricky area in any context, whether it be, I used to do corporate litigation and it was all equitable in Delaware Chancery Court. It's very, and it's hard in the abstract to do what the court seems to want to do in all these cases, which is provide a simple rule that applies and divides one set of cases from another set of cases. And you can't really do it in this circumstance because all these cases are so different. The equities go, what we call the equities, like, who's harmed by what and how big is the harm and how complex is everything. They go every which way and differently in any of these cases. And so the court's going to have a tough time doing what it likes to do, which is it likes to set a rule, and it made the mistake of doing it, as we've talked about in the criminal immunity case of Trump, where they basically, we're going to decide this forever, even though we can't even foresee what the cases are going to be. We can't, although we could foresee how criminal Trump was going to be, but let's leave that up.
Yeah, Donald Trump breaking all kinds of new legal ground in our court systems. You know those khakis in your closet, George? The ones you grab when you have to take...
I don't have those anymore.
The ones you grab when you have to look nice? You don't have them anymore?
No, I have this.
Oh, could those be the perfect jean?
This is the perfect jean. They come
well,
in
that's
white.
so good. Because, when you have to grab those khakis because you got to look nice, but you immediately start counting down.
Like a Rockettes thing? Like, look, here's my...
You want to show how comfortable they are?
They are very comfortable.
Well, don't you, when you're in khakis, you immediately start counting down the hours so you can take them off because they are not comfortable. Whoever designed them clearly never had to sit through 3-hour meetings or go to your in-laws' backyard barbecue or sit in this podcast room for hours while we talk about the illegal news. They dig into your waist, sag in all the wrong places, and leave you fidgeting in your seat all day. Stop suffering for the sake of looking professional and upgrade to something that actually works as hard as you do. Den khakis by The Perfect Jean. George knows all about it. They're the holy grail of pants. Stretchy enough to bend down to fix the printer, again, without fear of splitting a seam. So comfortable you'll forget you're wearing work pants, and seriously stylish, even your boss will be rethinking her wardrobe. Pair them with...
You're the boss here.
I guess so. And you do. I look at those and I think...
great. I love them.
I think, boy, I got to get me a pair of those.
I used to have these white pants when I was a kid. They were kind of like carpet. They called them carpenter jeans or something like that.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's like, these are very comfortable. They're just amazing.
I can't pull off white jeans. Pair them with TPJ's
Well, it's a good
polos
summer thing.
for a look that nails professionalism without sacrificing an ounce of comfort, so you can look good from the links to the team happy hour. You're staying for happy hour today.
Ooh.
For days off, you can ditch the den khakis and embrace their ultra soft organic cotton tees that have the perfect amount of stretch to provide the perfect fit and everyday comfort. Shorts that keep you looking and feeling fresh in the heat. Never get caught looking imperfect again. Do you wear shorts? No?
No, I believe. You remember The Sopranos? Dons don't wear shorts.
Okay.
Remember that one?
I didn't know that.
No, the guy from New York comes over to Tony's backyard, and Tony's grilling and the hamburgers and stuff, and he's wearing shorts. And the New York boss says to him, Dons don't wear shorts. I know I'm not a Don, but
Over 30,000 men have rated The Perfect Jean 5 stars because you should never have to sacrifice comfort for style. They come in 3 fits, 5 washes, waist sizes 26 to 50, and lengths 26 to 36, giving you over 1,500 combinations to find your perfect pair for client-facing days, playing 18 holes, or grabbing some drinks with the guys at the rooftop bar. For a limited time, our listeners get 15% off their first order plus free shipping at theperfectjean.nyc, or Google The Perfect Jean and use code Ask George 15. Ask
15.
George
Okay.
15. It's finally time to stop wearing uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc. Be like George. Get your perfect jeans now. Hey, but one thing I wanted to ask you about was Barrett, Justice Barrett.
Yes.
She was very incredulous about, not the whole time, but at times, about the argument the government was making. What did you think of her? She kept being like, do you really mean that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, and if I were on the court, I'd be channeling her. She's absolutely right. I think she's a conservative's conservative. I mean, I think, I think she's kind of a Bulwark justice.
Yeah.
Let's not say that too loud. But, she is just very, very sensible. And she can see, she's looking at this, and I didn't, I wasn't in the courtroom, but she must, it just sounded like from the tone of her voice and from the reading the transcript, like she's looking at this guy like he's got holes in his head.
Yeah.
And he does, because he's making this ridiculous argument that has no foundation in the Constitution. I'm talking the merits argument.
Right.
And basically ignoring Supreme Court precedent. And of course, she knows what's going on out in the real world, that the court is playing cat and mouse with the judges. She clearly gets that. And she asks a series of questions about, well, what happens if you lose a case in the U.S. Court of Appeals with the Second Circuit, which covers Vermont, New York, and Connecticut? Are you going to obey that decision in the next case? And he says, well, generally. Well, what do you mean generally? Okay. He's like, are you going to accept the precedent? If the Second Circuit says this is the rule, are you going to obey it in the next case? And he goes, well, generally. He wouldn't give the answer. The correct answer is yes, we obey the precedent. We obey the court decisions. And, and this goes to the question of, why, if the government is not going to take the decision of Longwell versus the United States and apply it to Conway when he brings his case, or before he brings his case, why are we going to go through that? Why not just issue an injunction saying they can't do it to any of us?
Yeah.
So that's where she was going. And she, I have become extremely fond of her.
I was having the same reaction. It's funny you say conservative, because this is the kind of thing where maybe back in the day, some of the people who listened to our show might not have liked ideologically where she went. But what you mean is, this is a person to whom fidelity to the law to precedent.
And logic and reason and facts.
Matters a great deal in a way where Kavanaugh is funny. I always saw Kavanaugh as being sort of temperamentally more moderate, but instead the way that seems to come out in his stuff is he's like, oh, I just hope everyone likes me. I just want to be such a nice guy here. And I want to give her, he kept saying over and over again, presidents of both parties, they issue executive orders, and they mean well. They always mean well. Like, he kept trying to inject the idea that there was good faith on the part of the government in this, whereas Barrett is very much like, this is bad faith. What are you guys talking about? Like, this is wrong.
That is important because that, how you do justice depends on not who the parties are, but their behavior.
Yeah.
And in this case, this is one of the things that sort of what tests our law about the Trump administration, or the second Trump administration especially, is there are rules that make sense if you're dealing with a government that's acting in good faith. But if you're dealing with a government that's basically a criminal organization,
right,
those rules don't really work. So are you going to create a different set of rules for bad people? It's not, it's really kind of a real test of how do you deal with this? A lot turns on that.
Yeah.
A lot turns on that. I mean, and it kind of has a name. It's been talked about. It was talked about during the first Trump administration. There is something that scholars have dubbed. I don't think it's a real legal doctrine, but it really it's something that describes how courts treat the government, the federal government, federal courts treating the federal government, and it's called the presumption of regularity. It's like when you're making a decision, and you're making, whether you're ruling on what the law is and how you're applying it to a particular set of facts, and even to what the facts are. You're presuming that the government isn't lying to you.
Yeah.
You presume that the government is honestly trying to get the law and the facts right. You don't treat the government the way you might treat a sleazy real estate developer who might be appearing before you. Let's just use a hypothetical example. Okay? You don't apply the level of skepticism you might to non-governmental parties who are manifesting some level of bad faith. And that's just a habit of the courts going back for a long time because, judges are public servants and they understand that bureaucrats and the president are public servants. And there should be some kind of faith in each other that they have that, you're not dealing with lying scumbags.
Yeah.
But the problem is now
they are dealing with lying scumbags.
And Barrett that was what Barrett was, some kind of like her skepticism is reflecting that, like, I can't believe we're dealing with these lying scumbags.
Yeah. And that is what I like about her very much, is she seems to live in the world that we live in. Of like, what are you guys talking about here? Why is this happening?
No. And if that comes out and she's got some courage because she's getting...
Oh, she's getting hammered on right-wing Twitter. They're all like...
Because they all believe it's like whatever Trump says, you have to obey.
That's right.
Like, no, dudes. You guys waving the American flag, you're saying that. It's like, that's not America. Okay? That's not how we became an independent country. Okay? We believe in an independent judiciary. We believe in the law. We do not believe in kings.
Yeah. Hey, so back to one of the things Kagan was saying. She was like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you bringing this case? Like, we, meaning the birthright citizenship one, like, we rule against you. It's over.
Right.
And I guess I wonder if they brought this sort of narrow procedural case because Sauer, the Solicitor General, like, wants a win for Trump.
I think,
and he thinks he can maybe get one on like this technical side.
I think that's right. I think that's because as I said earlier, this is like the worst fucking case.
Yeah.
To litigate the nationwide injunction issue because you are trying to sell just shit on the merits. That's a legal term. It goes back centuries. And so why not, if you really want to litigate the nationwide injunction issue, why do you want to seek a partial lifting of the stay in this case when the court's going to be thinking, boy, this case doesn't have merit.
Yeah.
And the one reason is he wanted to be able, it's not implausible, he wanted to be able to get something that was a win in the birthright citizenship case, and then he could go to the White House and see, look how great I am, Mr. President, I won something. Because they're going to lose everything
Well, and then
else.
Trump can say, because they are just lying about these verdicts anyway.
They do that with everything. They do that with these are all terrorists. Oh, these are criminals. Oh, these are wonderful agreements with the law firms.
But even they say, the Supreme Court ruled
trade deal.
They'll be like, the Supreme Court ruled in our favor when they absolutely didn't.
Right. Yeah. Stephen Miller basically lying out in the Oval Office about that. I mean, these people are just lying scumbags.
All right. So you already said it hinges on the last two, Roberts and Kavanaugh.
I think. Maybe some more. People who are in the courtroom might feel differently, but I don't know. That's just where I think it comes out. And I think that's going to come out. And I think what we're seeing, that division, the 4-2-3, is that pattern's going to come up. We're going to see that again and again.
Yeah. All right. Last question before we talk about OneSkin. What does happen if the government wins this particular case and then curtails the availability of injunctions?
What's going to happen is there's going to be more litigation. Okay. And at the end of the day, the litigation is going to get to the same place, because if it's an important issue and there are conflicting rulings, it goes to the Supreme Court. And all it means is the government is going to be able to do shit in the interim before the Supreme Court resolves the issue. That's going to create chaos randomly in some places and not others, with some plaintiffs and not others, in some states and not others. And that's not really particularly desirable. But what's going to do is it puts off the day when we're going to get to the point, which we've been talking about, where the administration says we are going to ignore the Supreme Court. Yes, the Supreme Court of the United States. Well, so that's what they've been doing all along. They're looking for ways to avoid judicial decisions and to get around the courts, whether it involves kidnapping people on the streets of Somerville, Massachusetts, taking them to Vermont, and then taking them to Texas or wherever, and then having to bring them back to Vermont to release them. And, people.
I was going to close the show with that piece of good news that she is out.
But they are doing everything to make the judges' lives more difficult, including by lying to them, by moving people around, by not giving notice about what they're doing, and by refusing to answer questions about what they're doing. They are doing everything they can to evade court orders without saying we are disobeying court orders.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that day will come. Sigh.
All right, George, we have got our favorite sponsor here. No, that's not true. We love all our sponsors equally. George, did you know that by the time the summer starts, your skin's already in defense mode? Sun exposure, chlorine, dry hair from the AC, and they all wear down your skin barrier, leaving your complexion dull, dehydrated, and more sensitive. Not you, though, buddy. You look great. So
I've got these little molecules, specially designed molecules you're about to talk about.
That's right. Today's sponsor, OneSkin, has everything you need to keep your skin healthy, hydrated, and strong all summer long. Their secret is a proprietary peptide called OS1. It's the first peptide scientifically proven to reduce the damaged cells that weaken your skin barrier and accelerate aging.
If you put an electron microscope and look at my face, you could see little OS1s. Kind of
all the little peptides running around.
Soaking into my skin.
Their moisturizers and sunscreens don't just treat dry skin and irritation on the surface. They go deeper, helping you restore your skin's health at the cellular level. This is the perfect time to reset before all of summer's skin stressors really kick in. The right moisturizer and SPF can make all the difference. Try OneSkin with 15% off your first order. Use code
Ask George
at oneskin.co. This is one of my favorite sponsors, in part because they send us so many free trials, and we both use it all the time.
I use it all the time now. I never used to moisturize my face.
Yeah, your skin looks great. You also look tan.
It's because that's because of the top down. As I said, the top down on my Jeep.
Yeah, so. Top down on your Jeep
But that makes me need the OneSkin even more.
I know. I'm at an age now where I want SPF in absolutely anything that goes on my face because the sun is my enemy.
You're very fair skinned.
I am very fair skinned. I had to start going to the dermatologist and getting checked for stuff. It's the worst.
Yeah.
And so SPF all the time. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off using code AskGeorge at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code AskGeorge. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them, and you can support our show and what we're doing here by telling them that we sent you. You got to use that code. Give your skin the scientifically proven gentle care it deserves with OneSkin. Thanks, OneSkin. All right, George. So one of the things I desperately wanted to talk to you about, even though it's broken a little while back, is the Qatar $400 million jet that is being given to Trump. And this is another one where I'm like, emoluments clause, Constitution, super clear.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes, it's absolutely clear.
Why is everybody acting like this is fine? Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching the show. If you want to catch the rest of this episode, then go become a Bulwark Plus subscriber. The link to become a subscriber is right below here in the episode description. Click on that, become a Bulwark Plus subscriber, catch the rest of the show, and support all the great work we do here at the Bulwark. Thanks, guys.
Well, George Conway, he's a man with a plan. Got to sit down with Sarah Longwell, take a stand, explain all the legal problems they're piling high. With Donald Trump, oh my, oh my, oh my. He said, Sarah, let me break it down for you. There's obstruction of justice.